while for all practical purposes, for months now, I've stayed in the house, I'm grateful for the many years I had where I was able to literally travel around the world. If you were to ask me what were the most memorable sights I've seen, I would have a whole list. Normandy was incredible. The river cruise down the Nile. The first time I saw the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I mean, Ithaca leans. But if you were to ask me what was the saddest sight I've ever seen, one immediately comes to mind. It was when I was in Jordan and I went to Har Nebo, Mount Nebo, the mountain where Moshe stood as he looked out and saw the promised land, his last view before dying. When you see what he could see, so near yet so far away, and he couldn't go to the land of his dreams, I cried. Why was he denied the opportunity to go to the land of Israel? Because of what happens in this week's Torah portion, where we are told that the Jews, for a change, complained. They complained about the water. And what did Moshe do? He hit the rock. And because he hit the rock, God said, you can't come into the promised land. What was so terrible about hitting the rock? You have no idea how many explanations there are, ranging from it wasn't just that he hit the rock, it was that God told him to speak to the rock, so big deal. And it was because he referred to the Jews as being rebels and a leader shouldn't talk that way about his people. Or he responded, should we get you water, saying he and Aaron, when he should have said, should the Lord get you water? There are so many explanations, but they're hard to really grasp. But the one that has always impressed me that speaks to then and now was one from the Netziv, Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who said, 38 years before, right when the Jews left Egypt, they complained about water. Moshe hit it, and the water came. And now he was doing the same thing. But this is a different generation. And you can't keep doing the same thing from generation to generation. 38 years ago, when the Jews left Egypt, they still had these pagan images in their mind. So doing something as supernatural, so to speak, as hitting the rock, was something that was going to impress the Jews. But this was a new generation, didn't know from Egypt, and they didn't know from pagan worship, and they didn't know from so many of the things that their parents and grandparents had experienced. And to this generation, Moshe had to speak differently and act differently. It couldn't be same old, same old. You know, many centuries later, the Jews were confronted with a similar issue in the sense that when the Reformation and Enlightenment came and the Reform movement started to grow strong, they demanded change. And a great rabbi at that time, the Chassam Sofer, said, Ein chadash min haTorah, on a play of words. He said, the Torah prohibits anything new. And some Jews have maintained that ever since. They wouldn't change their way of dress. They wouldn't make any changes in synagogue architecture. Their entire lives was to complete doing things the way the previous generation did. But you know what the strength of Judaism has always been? That we learned to do things differently. In the 1460s, Gutenberg discovered the printing press. Do you know within 50 years, 1/5 of the printers in the world were Jews. We immediately started using the newest devices. We started printing the Talmud and the Haggadah and the Siddur. The Muslims, they wouldn't use the printing press for hundreds of years because it said it was a desecration of the Quran. And so the Islamic world, which had always been in the forefront of progress, fell behind and has never recuperated. In the 20th century, there was a Rav Kook in Israel. And he also, on a play of words, came up with the following declaration. HaChodesh Yiskadesh v'HaKodesh Yischadesh. The new will become sacred, and the sacred will be renewed. He was dealing with the new generation of Jews who are now living in Israel and realized how things had to be done differently. There are some people who resist change within the Jewish community in our generation. The ultra-Orthodox frowned upon the use of television, couldn't have a television in your home, and then said, you can't have a computer, and if you have it, it's only for business, and you can't have a smartphone, and if you have it, there are certain things it can have, certain things it can't have. Just think of what the last few months would have been without Zoom and Facebook and all of the other technological wonders. And so it's important to incorporate the new while being sensitive to the old. You can't fight it, or you can, but what's the good of it? The world is changing around us. And if you have any question about that, just think of this. NASCAR has banned the use of the Confederate flag. Wow. So you know what? You can either go along with the flow or be pulled under. I vote for sanctifying the new. Shabbat Shalom.